horse whinny or whatever that noise was just now. But we are live on YouTube and the Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom, number 289. I'm your host, Greg Galb. The gang's all here with Tony and Mike and Gio and John and Jeremy and Don and Garth and other people. Let us converse about the cars that ride in slots. I have a show and tell and an announcement. But if anybody else has show and tell, raise your virtual hand so I make sure to call on you when I'm done. The announcement, and you heard it here first. I've made an agreement with Alex Duncan, who is the owner proprietor of Axlebox, which many Carrera Digital people know of, is basically an analog box, thing for your Carrera Digital, so you flip a switch and run your analog cars. It's called Axlebox. The agreement I made with him is basically he can make and sell GNS tire grinders for Canadian customers. So if you're in Canada and you've been wanting a GNS tire grinder machine kit, whatever, but the shipping costs and duties and whatever else you end up having to pay for on top of the actual purchase annoys you, as well as the amount of time it takes to ship something from the States into Canada. Or heck, if you're in Europe, it's probably still cheaper to order from him than me because shipping is probably cheaper from Canada to Europe. Go to the Axlebox Facebook group. I don't know if he's got a different page, but that's where most of the action happens. But yeah, there you go. He's basically me in Canada. I get nothing from the sales. He's doing all the work himself. And if you are a previous customer of mine and I've shipped up to you in Canada, you can now go to him for replacement parts and spares and whatever you need to keep your machine running or to upgrade your machine in the future or whatever the case may be. And I give him permission also to do any other of my slot car 3D prints, like the Carrera pistol grip adapter for controllers and Harbor Freight accessories and whatnot. Yeah. Any other questions or any questions on that? It's pretty simple. Just go to Alex, go to Axlebox, and I'll make a textual announcement on the various forums and pages and stuff like that, and provide links to the Axlebox Facebook group and whatever avenues of sales he has going on for his products. Maybe he sells through a retailer up there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what happens in 2.5 years, maybe, when Trump is gone and the US, you guys from the US and Canada gain friends?
This is in perpetuity. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not. The main benefit right now is because of Trump's nonsense, but I have I don't need the money. I just want to see more machines out there. If people can get them cheaper, by all means, I'm happy to do that. And I'm gonna die eventually anyway, so after that, it's fair game. All right, so I think that's.
Is this guy
right here and
younger
now.
than you?
If I die right now.
Also, let's not pretend it was easy to ship back and forth from Canada long ago.
Ever.
It's always been a pain.
It's always been expensive and time consuming, and yeah.
Okay.
That's for sure. Okay. I also have a show and tell. Some of you may have seen this on Slot Forum. That's the wrong button to click. This is the eSpeed 32 DIY controller. I did not DIY this. Henry Ravenstein of H&B Test Bench fame, and here on the chat is often here. He and his guy put these together, and they're going to, build them and sell them in various places. I'm sure that Alan over at 132slotcar.us will sell them just like he sells the H&B Test Bench. It is 100% electronic, and it's pretty cool. It's similar in ways to the Silage controller, except different in many ways. I did take multiple pictures. Let's go here. Okay, so it's pretty. Like I said, all electronic. You have one knob, and the knob is a 360 rotational clickety knob that is also a button. So when you want to change a setting, you turn the knob until that setting is highlighted, and then click the knob button in order to change the setting, and then turn up and down the setting. Right. So brake is at the top of the list. When the controller is on, you've got brake, sensitivity, anti-spin or traction control, curve, PWM frequency, which is specifically targeted towards brushless motor users. It can go between 1.0 K, whatever that number represents, and I think it was 2.5 or maybe 5. I forget what the top level is. But it makes quite a bit of difference even with analog cars. Like I switched at a high PWM frequency with the trigger barely touched, so the min speed is doing its thing. Well, I was testing with a Revo slot car at the time, and it basically did just that high pitched squeal. Didn't do anything, didn't go anywhere, didn't move at all. But without changing any other settings, if I turn the PWM frequency down to 1,000, then the car actually moved, right? It was a low enough frequency that it made the motor turn over and move the car forward. So that setting makes a pretty big difference, even with straight up brushed analog cars. So it's kind of like another sensitivity tweak to how the controller performs. Then you've got limit, which is your maximum throttle, so like a choke. And then you have, did I skip that? Okay, so just below limit is a car selection option. If I scroll down a little bit more, you would see car, and then over here you would see the name of the car. It has 10 memory banks. So what you do is you go down to car, you click in the button, and then you get to a selection screen or a rename screen. This is the selection screen. So I renamed my number 0 car as Revo, because we were doing Revo slot racing, so I wanted to, get it all set up for that. And then I did another car for NSR because that's what we were racing for IROC. And basically to switch between them, you just go to the menu, highlight the one you want, click the button, and then you're back at the beginning screen to change the settings. As far as I could tell, pretty much all the settings changes are automatically saved. So as soon as you make a change, and then you can go switch cars or whatever. Here's a picture of the curve screen. You're basically changing, it's showing you your min speed and your max speed, but you're changing the midpoint of the curve. So the default is 50%, which is a straight linear line between min and max. And then anything below 50% does a downward curve or a cup. And then anything above 50% is a bump, I guess you would say. So a higher curve percentage will give you quicker attack on the throttle that then levels out towards the top end. So if you spend a lot of time at the bottom of the throttle, maybe this is for you. This curve is slow to attack and then speeds up at the end. This is how I race because I like to use a lot of low speed in the turns and then jam it on the straights. Then one downside to the controller currently is, and they're seeing if they could figure this out, but it is fully electronic. There is no battery in this controller like the Silage controller, so it does have a boot lag. In this controller, however, it's better than the Silage controller in that this one is a 15 millisecond boot lag, which is perceivable, but not catastrophic, right? So when I was racing, the way that most of our tracks work is the power relay is between the power and the controllers rather than the controllers and the track. So on tracks where the power relay is between the controllers and the track, you don't need to worry about it because your controller has power the whole time, right? As soon as you plug in, your controller has power, you're good to go. No delay, right? Because the controller is turned on. For tracks like ours, where the power relay is between the power and the controller is off. Can't make any adjustments, can't do anything until the track power comes on, which is when you're racing. So that 15 millisecond delay was enough that you could see it, but I only lost a few inches, right? I wasn't getting the whole shot depending on, who I was racing with and how timid they are into the first turn. But I lost a couple inches. It was not detrimental, right? That wasn't deciding my performance in the race. It was all the rest of my driving that made the big difference, right? So that lag isn't a big deal. To some people, a millisecond is too much lag. So, like I said, they're looking at ways to, provide some kind of inline power so that it's already on, for dead tracks like that. We'll see. But again, if your track has power, when the cars don't have power, but your controllers do, then it's not a problem. It's, as you can see, the shell is 3D printed. You can have a two-finger trigger or single finger trigger. When you order it, you can, ask for banana plugs or SLR or probably, alligators or whatever. I went with XLR because that's what we race. Being 3D printed and basically just having a PCB with a screen on it and, the knob and like a big capacitor for spikes is very light, very, very light. And the trigger is very light. You can, replace the spring and there is a spring tensioner on the back. I didn't get a picture of that, but on the back side of the controller, there is a spring tensioner. So if you have a heavy spring that you want to be a little bit lighter, you can, reduce tension or vice versa. But if you can't find a good tension with whatever's in there, you can, replace the spring fairly easily, like most controllers. I feel like I already talked a lot about this, so I guess I'll take questions now if anybody has any regarding this controller.
Yeah, so I know that this controller basically was designed from the ground up by this guy Fabio or something. I don't know if he's Italian or Spanish.
I
So
think he's
is it
Spanish.
Spanish? So is it working in partnership with Harry?
No, Henry has basically got, his permission from him or whatever, permission is needed to make and sell the controllers,
Okay.
right? So I don't think Henry has any, other than feedback to him saying, gee, it'd be nice if I don't think he has any clout beyond that as far as changes that can be made.
So
I mean,
this
if I were to
controller, this
go ahead,
controller basically, did you build in your garage or was Harry sending the one to you?
this is what I got from Henry.
Ah, okay, okay.
Yeah,
Because
I
you have
didn't.
to get all the parts, I mean, the electronics, then downloading the software, the firmware. It's
Yeah,
doing
no.
all of that.
He's doing all that. Yeah, exactly. When you saw the same thread that I did, months ago or whenever it was when the designer introduced it to the world. I think it was a year ago actually now. Um, it's not it's not very hard to do, but it does require some technical expertise in various things. I believe you can order a fully component assembled board from PCBWay where they have theirs made. But you still have to solder various things on. You still have to calibrate, still have to figure the magnet out. You have to calibrate the magnet. You gotta, do the print. You gotta assemble the whole thing. It's a thing that I had no interest in doing. But everything is the information on how to do it and the firmware and everything, print
Yeah.
file, all that is free. So if anybody has the capabilities, they can absolutely go make their own. But for people like me, even though I have the capability, I had no desire whatsoever to to do it. So I'm happy that he made that, and I get to play with it. I don't have a pricing or availability yet. I believe uh, Henry probably would take an order if you contacted him, and I believe that they will probably be available through Allen's 132 slotcar.us, like I mentioned earlier. But I don't know what the price is going to be. Sub 200 almost for sure, but that's just a guess.
So did you use for racing?
I did. Yeah, I decided that I would just go ahead and force myself to race with that controller on Monday night. I liked it quite a bit. But because our power is switched between the power supply and the controller, I had to jerry rig this in order to make changes between heats. Easy enough to do, but that's one of the downsides is not being able to make changes on a track like ours, um, except during racing, which is pretty much not a thing. You can, if you want to, like since brakes is at the top of the menu, when it boots up, it's always on the brake option. So if you remember that and you want to adjust brakes, all you got to do is, click the button and then start, tweaking the brake settings. But I did need to make some other changes, like to the anti-spin setting, or I wanted to reduce the power of the NSR cars because they were way overpowered for the track that we were on and the voltage we were running. So I had to tune that down. And I could only do those things between heats because I had to go to the menu and change things. But for tracks that either all have power before the race starts and after the race ends, or for the people who basically just do all of their setup and controller tweaking during practice, which most of us do anyways. But like for the way we race, because we have a strict no tire cleaning rule, like not even if there's marbles on the tires, we can't even clean marbles off the tires. The performance changes fairly drastically from the beginning of the night to the end of the night because we can't touch the car basically. Uh, Whereas most clubs at least have a basic tire cleaning allowance of some sort between heats or whatever. Those clubs, the performance isn't going to change all that much from beginning to end of the night like it does for us. So, during practice, you do all your controller settings, tweaks, and stuff like that, and then it's saved, and then you can switch to a different one for a different car and whatnot. The one of the features I really like about this one versus the Silage controller with the memory banks is that you can rename the memory bank. I don't know how to do that on the Silage controller. If it's possible, I don't think it is, but this was super easy to rename the bank, so I don't have to remember was my Revo on bank 2, 3, or 4, or was it on one, or whatever. I rename it so I know exactly which car I'm choosing. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, cool. That is it for me. I'm sure there will be more about this controller down the road, especially once it's available. We have a price and stuff like that. You guys can harass Henry on my behalf for not making a blue and yellow one for me.
I did have a question for you, Greg.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
the changes that you make on a particular setting, those are automatically saved? You don't have to, there's no saving option. Just like if you go to the Revo settings, you make a smart minor tweak, then it's just, you go to another car and go back to the Revo, it has that minor tweak that you put in there to save, right?
As far as I can tell, yeah, there was no action that I needed to do for that to happen, and there was no delay between making the change and having the change saved. Like on the Silage controller, when you make a change, any change whatsoever to your current settings, like 2 or 3 seconds later, it flashes saving or backup or whatever on the screen. So that's when it's doing its saving action. You still don't have to do anything, and it does it. It just has a delay, probably, so it's not saving every time you click the wheel. And this one might be doing the same thing, every time, not saving every single click of the knob, but giving it a second before it dedicates it to memory. But it never flashed anything on the screen, and I never lost any settings when I went and changed between the memory banks. The previous settings were there.
And how practical is it with just a single knob for making tweaks for different things? You have the brakes, you have the
Yeah.
yeah, that's while you're racing, making those types of changes kind of
Yeah, not terribly practical. You
yeah,
definitely want to do as much of that as possible during
in
practice,
practice.
where you
Yeah,
can just stop on the
yeah,
track and make a tweak.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Actually, one nice advantage to the menu system is that drivers are forced to only change one thing at a time,
That's good.
which is a good practice.
Yeah,
Because if you had three knobs and you're going, okay, well, turn, turn,
the,
turn, and then you drive the car, you don't really know what had
Yeah.
the most beneficial effect. People are still going to, tweak multiple things. They'll go, okay, well, turn the anti-spin up, turn the, brakes down, turn the, whatever, and then drive the car around. But at least this gives them pause between each change before they make another change. But yeah,
Well,
that's
so
you're not going to be doing it during a race
yeah.
much, unless you can memorize the order of things and trust that when you turn the knob and get one click, it's only moving one menu item or whatever. But at least brake is at the top, which is probably your most commonly
Yeah.
changed
Yeah.
function. So
Okay. Thank you.
sure. All right. Anybody else? All right, let's move on. Go to you got show and tell, Gio.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys noticed in the last week, but at one point there was a fire alarm going off, and that was from my house. And basically was my compressor that I believe is a hack job. I bought second-hand from someone from Canada that was here for a while. This was more than 10 years ago or something along those lines. So I must have like the 110, 240, 120, what's 110, 120, 240 kind of switch, let's say internal, to handle both type of power. Here we run 240, right? So, and the body thing has been connected to power for, I didn't know that was basically something alive. So basically that stuff was, I think, starting to catching up fire. So I had to buy a new uh, air compressor for my eye brush. So at the end, I got, and if you guys can see, you cannot. Yeah, so this one, I bought it here local. I mean, even from AliExpress, the equivalent would have been much more expensive just to ship. So this is, it has like a tank. It has already the control valve for the pressure and capturing the water or whatever condensation you might have. The tank is bigger than the one that I had. It's much quieter, and also like when you reach pressure, this one will shut off. The other one will keep going. So maybe also was one reason why that stuff was getting overused, I would say, or abused. And comes so this I bought this stuff for I think $150 New Zealand. So this might be, I don't know, you can find maybe for 75, 80 in the US, even less, I would say. And the other kind of thing is it has like comes with a cheap, shitty airbrush, but because of the big size tank, these you can use, for instance, for spraying primer. So you don't need to kind of ruin your nice, more expensive airbrush. So I think with this airbrush, I have now 10 different airbrush, but we cannot have enough. And I can reuse this one with, I mean, the containers because you can basically screw them on. You can use also with other similar kind of containers. And also comes with a hose that is kind of springy instead of the kind of a normal long stuff that is hanging all around. And it has like the proper fittings for what you would use for good airbrush. So normally you will get like these tiny ones that are very kind of finicky to deal with. These are the fittings for the hose is a proper size for 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 dealing with a good airbrush as well. I don't remember what is the actual size, but it's a good enough. So yeah, good deal, I would say. And if you're looking, if you're at the market for something like that, otherwise to get one before get some fun.
Did you get a compressor? Just got here late, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look pretty good. Have you used it yet?
I'm not to paint yet, but I tried. I did some kind of test for to see whether it would hold air and stuff like that. And I didn't need to do any kind of putting any what's plumber tape or anything, just to put the fittings in and everything worked. Yeah, and actually the other thing, like with the previous one that I had all these tight fittings or whatnot. I mean, after I would shut down the compressor, after a couple of minutes there was no air. This one basically after was a couple hours, even more, the air was still there. I mean, the pressure was still up there. And actually, they say to kind of let the air go, do not leave with the air inside. Again, I think it's around for condensation, stuff like that.
Nice.
Anyway, yeah. So I was basically almost because also that the room is full of paint and shit. So if somebody would have started there was no freaking way that even firefighters would have had a harder problem stop it. I mean, it would have been like a small kind of small bank. I mean, yes, definitely. Anyway, so yeah.
Any other questions for Gio? Moving along. What you got, Dale?
Oh, okay. I have more of it's not really a show and tell, it's more of a show and question. And the question is, I'm working on this Fly GT40, and I'm wondering what this box is in the back of the chassis. It's got a couple of real springs in it, and the exhaust pipe, it comes out the back of that box. But I don't know if this whole thing is for decoration or if it has a function on the car.
I do not have that car. Can you hold it up to the camera a little bit?
I'm sorry?
Can you hold it up to the camera?
I can do that.
Yeah, but those are not the real spring. Those are, I think, replicas of shock absorbers. So it's just the
No, there's electronics in there.
They're not visible. When the body is on, you can't see those springs. And here is another one of those things I took out of a used GT40 that I got some time ago. And you can see the two springs, one on each side. And then there's this little plate here. It's a metal plate. It's very thin. It's got a shape to it and it looks like it's almost made as a photo etch part. And I have no idea what it is. These springs, when you put this on the chassis, the bottom open end of the spring seats in a little bump in the chassis to locate it so it doesn't wiggle around.
Right.
But it's got to have a intended function because it doesn't really add to the looks of the car.
It's purely decorative, Dale.
Well, what's the back of this supposed to look like? It's just two kind of dumb looking flat surfaces, and the springs, again, they're not visible when the body is on.
Could they be the luggage boxes required by the FIA?
Well, okay, that sounds like a very good answer. I could believe that.
It looks like
I mean,
a capacitor.
Just
looks
to
like a
remove it and
capacitor.
see whether it change any kind of performance. Well, I don't think actually it will only improve because you will remove a huge amount of weight on the back of that car.
Well, see, what the former owner of this used box, he had the foresight, or maybe it's blindness, to bore a couple of holes in the top part of the plastic, and he stuffed some lead weight down there and sealed it back up with some probably it's shoe goo, looks like a rubberized cement. And so if there's any mechanism down in there, he certainly stopped it up by shoving that lead.
There's no mechanism in there, and you've got your bushings, you've got your motor plugged into the chassis, your bushings plugged into the upright. They're not going anywhere. That is purely purely a Fly decorative. Somebody came up with that.
Okay.
That is
Okay,
so.
well, I must say it's not what flies better decorative ideas. So
Well, there's
Can
lots
you
of
hold it? Can you hold it up to the camera
wise.
again?
Yeah, it'd be wise to take those lead weights out of that thing. You don't want a whole bunch of weight behind the rear axle.
oh well, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hold up the side. Show us the side closest to the motor, and then bring it up real close. It looks like those might be capacitors, are they? No.
No, no,
Capacitor.
Oh no, I see. Yeah, I see the
there's
springs.
there's a wire that's fastened to the top of each spring, but
And the roller bar.
Anti-roll bar.
and yeah, and this car has a interior plate in it, so you can't see this stuff through the rear window.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see only when you remove the wheels, like in the rear car. So if you put on jacks on the pit plate, then you can see that.
Here's the chassis that this one came out of, and you can see now that it's kind of naked. It's got a couple of uprights here that box snaps to.
Right.
Does the stuff come out of the box?
Haven't tried to disassemble it. It looks like it's put together to stay together.
Yeah.
Are all the GT40 from flies like that?
I'm sorry.
Because
Say again.
I don't know if all flies GT40s are all like that with that piece of decorative plastic.
Well,
I don't have any flies.
I've looked online on pictures of the GT40 for sale, and I found one that had this box on it, and it was one for sale on the website of Great Traditions, and it was a GT40, but of a different color. I can't remember what the color was, but it wasn't this yellow number 8. And it showed the rear end of the car, and all you could see is these back panels.
Mm-hmm.
And the pipe sticking out in this cross member bar. So, okay.
I don't know. I think that the only expert here, or one of the most kind of knowledgeable person about flies, I think, is Chris.
Yeah.
He knows how to play with that. So, these are before my time.
Okay.
I actually have a couple of fly GT40s I could take a look at, but I'm at home right now. I'll take a look at them.
Sounds good, Duan.
I would be happy with Chris. I mean, I'm not happy with Chris's answer, but I think that's the most likely answer. Just a very, very poorly designed decorative thing.
Well,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, it is, and actually it is, and it isn't. If you go back in history in Le Mans, those boxes are supposed to represent little toolboxes because the cars had to carry tools in the car.
Yeah.
So it is not a performance thing whatsoever. You can't really see it, but is supposed to be little storage compartments for a few of the tools that they would carry in the car, as per the rules, which have long since gone away.
I can buy that explanation, but I have yet to be able to buy an explanation about what those springs are doing, because they are not at all visible when the body is on.
You know, fine.
Are they actual springs that compress?
Yes,
No.
they're steel springs.
Yep. As were the springs on the 9083s from Fly. They were all compressible, vinyl coated steel springs, but they were purely from an aesthetic point of view. They had no function whatsoever in the chassis.
I have a number of 903s, and I have yet to find one with those 908s. I mean, I have yet to find one. It's like here's a 908.
Right. There's the springs.
The springs are blue, and probably to be like a Bilstein spring over shock, but they're they're visible with the car fully assembled.
Yeah, but they are compressible as well, right?
Yeah,
Can you
yeah,
move them? Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So basically,
yeah.
they're
I think
not
they're real
they're
springs.
not a real suspension. I mean, they look like the real thing. That's the only stuff.
Right.
Now, for the GT40, maybe because such a compressed car, maybe it's not visible. But you as modeler know that you have the spring inside. This if you are someone that goes for this kind of details and you get orgasm from that, then you know that it's there, so you can enjoy knowing that it's there. But apart from that, I don't think they do much.
Okay.
So I play around a lot with the fly trucks, and they also have all these kind of metallic spring or coils that actually for replicating tubes, the pipes that trucks have, for instance.
It's
And
probably
that's decorative.
cheaper. It's probably cheaper for Fly to get real springs, cheap real springs from somewhere, than it is to make them out of
Just to
plastic.
mold.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah,
Good point.
that's right. All right. Well, onward and upward then. Thanks, guys.
Question answered. Does anybody else have any show and tell?
Who is that Lamborghini mirror? That's
John.
like John.
Yeah,
I would like to get to one of these.
it's auto art.
Yeah.
Oh God.
You don't want that. You don't want it.
You don't want that.
Wow. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The body is wonderful, but the rest of it is pretty bad.
Well, yeah, we know that. But I just need a body.
That's what Wayne is showing. What Fly was trying to model.
Replicate. Correct. Yeah, but because basically the springs would have been on top of the axle, they put it back inside the containers.
Yeah. Alrighty. I guess we're moving on to Club Corner. If you got some racing you want to talk about, now is the time to do it.
Do you have anything, Greg?
One comment.
I mean,
One comment, please.
only-
Auto art is apparently getting out of the slot car business, and so their stuff is lots of times you can find it pretty cheap. So you
Something
can
got
just
out a
put a
while ago.
Lamborghini body.
Yeah, they've been gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
I don't think they're cheap. At least when I look for them, they're not that cheap. They're collectible now.
Yeah,
Like an
great
Inco.
bodies. Great looking bodies, that's for sure. Like Fly. As far as my racing goes, when I was talking about the controller, I used that controller. It was we were racing Revo slots on a wood track, and I did midfield not particularly well, but that's because
GT cars?
What's that?
Which Revo slot? GT?
I was driving, GT. I was driving my Lister, which is not terribly competitive to begin with a field full of Porsches and Marcos and stuff. On most of our tracks are fairly small, but I was driving it because I wanted to, not because I thought it would be a winner. So
Okay.
midfield is fine by me, not complaining about that, but mainly because a couple of early offs is pretty much all you need to end up midfield.
Do you race them stock? I mean, which kind of throwing the tires or?
I mean, I trued the tires to a certain extent. I didn't glue them, but just got them as even as I could. Other than that, yeah, pretty much bone stock. Some of the other guys, I think they were allowing the different chassis nuts, so you could have a different float, but I didn't feel the need for that. I think ballast was allowed, but I didn't feel the need for that either.
Did you play around with the ball bearings?
On this particular car, I
sure they're there for all.
Yeah, on this particular car, when I got it, the fronts did not continue spinning at all, really. So I had to adjust those so that they had good spin. The backs were fine. Other than that, I didn't really do much. I did real well at last week on Chris's track. I got like second place or something like that. So it's not necessarily the car. It's just sometimes I do better on some other tracks. Yeah, could have been my could have been my mood. But yeah, mainly it was I never expect to do terribly well. I just want to not be last, and so I use the opportunity to test out the controller quite a bit, and as far as actual driving feel, I quite like it. If we get the other situations figured out, then maybe I'll use it more consistently. Anywho, Mike, did you want to do yours without putting your hand up?
Oh, yes, I did put my hand up earlier, but that's okay. Yeah, let me get the share up.
Nice watch.
Okay, we raced just Joel and I were there. Shiggy begged off. He had something happen that he had to go to. And we raced we had a Revo slot day. I did since there were only two of us, I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to race the Porsche and the RX-7 together. And I gave him 5 liters of fuel differential, which wasn't nearly enough. His offs contributed to a huge deficit in this one, and the Porsche one handling. So then we raced the GT1s. I finished first with the Mercedes, and I gave him a 10-liter differential in tank size, and he also had 2.5 seconds in speed differential, and he still didn't have enough to make a difference. I beat him even worse than that one. The GT1 is the Toyota GT1 is the fastest of my GT of the Revo slots that I have, and it was clearly faster, and he beat me in qualifying by a tenth and a half. So he clearly was able to drive it, but he couldn't keep it on the track. So it was a runaway by about 12, 13 laps. So that was not as much fun from that standpoint, but it was nice to race anyway. And we did with 2 ghost cars. One little bit note is that I tried to set up a third ghost car that changes lanes. So after we got done, I figured out how to get it set up. I tried it before the first race, or the second race rather, and couldn't figure it out right away. It wouldn't work. We tried a couple times the starts and it wouldn't go. And I figured out what I was doing wrong because I hadn't set up the ghost cars in quite a while. But I did eventually get it to do it, and it was interesting for a number of reasons. Number one, you can set the amount of lane changing that it does. And my worry with it was that the 2 cars would get together, the 2 ghost cars would get together and push each other around, because there's usually a little differential between the speeds of them. And of course, it updates the speeds every lap that you go. So 2 things were interesting about that. Number one, the car would change lanes at almost always the same spot. So it looks for the first lane changer, it appears, after the start-finish line to change lanes. So that was a good thing because it's consistent. When you're racing, you'll know that if it's in your way and you can't do anything about it, it'll change at that lane changer, so you can wait till that point. You just have to have a little patience. The second thing is it proved, for something I've thought of for quite a while, and I haven't been able to figure out why, is that the outside lane is lower on voltage and speed than the inside lane. And it's not from track power getting across there because I've taken the wires out of the power base and put them so that all 4 wires come directly from the power base rails to the jumpers that I've got. So internally, apparently, in the power base, there's a differential in the power that goes to the what's considered the outside lane on my track, as opposed to the inside lane, which makes no sense whatsoever. I don't know if anybody else has ever discovered this. Let me know. So, but I did eventually get the ghost cars changing lanes to work, and it was never a problem that it pushed the car off the track. I just let him go 125 laps at the speeds that I set them at, and they were relatively close in speed. But what happened is that the change lane car would slow down in the outside lane, and the other ghost car would catch up to it, and then it would switch lanes and have more power and walk away from it again. So it pulled a little space in there so you could get there, but you had to be patient and wait for the spot to do it. So this is going to be interesting. We'll see how it works maybe next week. If there's only 3 of us on the one, and I'll run the 3 ghost cars and see what happens. So it should be fun. And Joe will be frustrated as hell, as usual, because he doesn't like ghost cars at all. Get the hell out of my lane unless you're racing, is his motto. But anyway, that's it was a good fun day anyway. So that's all I got.
So was only one pace car changing lanes, or were they both changing lanes?
Only one. I
Okay.
had 2 pace cars in each one pace car in each lane.
Yeah.
So there's 2 pace cars there, and the 3rd pace car was the only one that changed lanes.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I could tell.
Yeah.
It was interesting to watch because you could definitely see the cars catch up to one another, and they would come close, and then you're blocked. So it might be a concern. We'll see what happens. Don't want to piss the guys off too badly. We'll try it out and see how it goes.
So Mike, this third car was visibly slower or just doing slower lap times?
It would slow down in one lane as opposed to the speed of the other one. Okay. So you could see the car's speed differential very easily because they were close together.
Gotcha.
Okay. So when it changed to the outside lane, it slowed down. And the inside lane would catch up quickly. Whereas before that,
have you got jumpers across a single track piece to connect both right lanes and both left lanes to each other across a single track piece?
It doesn't matter.
No,
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anyway. I mean, I have the same thing, and sometimes some cars go slower on one lane, depending which one you're using. With the Scalatrix, conductivity is random.
Random conductivity.
Well, Gio, have you got all your pieces connected with a wire?
Yes, I mean, because when I bought this truck, was all connected and stuff. Again, conductivity is all over the place with the Scalatrix. You cannot trust it.
Okay.
The rates, I mean, you can bring whatever you want underneath it. I mean, I know Greg has done it, but in my garage, for instance, depending on the one that is close to the door or to the garage door that is more exposed to the elements, behaves completely different than the other side. Plus, we use always the internal lane, so that lane is very good, and the external one is always a bit slower. So you can see when you're driving that your car will change. And all the lanes are wired up together. So,
well, the interesting thing about that is it has nothing to do with the amount of traction it's on, which I could understand if there's not enough rubber put down on the outside lane that you don't use as much. That makes sense. But both cars were set at the same point. But one thing that happens is that the speed for the ghost cars is updated in PC lap counter every time it goes past the start finish. So if it went across in the slow lane, it would recognize that the lap time was slower and kick it up. So it could be that, or it's a result of that, but I don't know for sure.
Is Scalextric Sport Track the only track rails that actually get this grey appearance? And you know, perfectly functional Scalextric Sport Track can actually have a kind of tin colour on the top surface, which you can, if you abrade it lightly, you can get it all to go away. I wonder whether or not it's the fact that your braids are running around in one lane, constantly abrading it and constantly keeping it kind of polished to some extent. Well, that doesn't happen in your outside lane.
Yeah, that's correct. That's what is happening.
That's possible. I can't see any discernible difference between the two lanes, and I use Inox on a fairly regular basis, so that would have some protection about it. But it may be that there's better conductivity without anything on it. Although I can definitely see a difference if you put, for instance, if I qualify, if I run my laps in practice at a certain level, and I put a drop or two of Inox on it for my qualifying, I'm always qualifying better with more power. So it's an interesting conundrum, and I don't know why. It's possible that internally there's something that it doesn't give equal power to the lanes, due to a slight drop in voltage because of whatever, usage of power internally or what. So
well, the nickel plated steel rails, and I don't know whether it's just the nickel plating, but if you leave a piece of Scalextric track unattended, or even unattended or used, it doesn't seem to matter. They go grey, and I used to be very particular.
They rust. I have a new piece of track sitting like single lane track sitting next to my track, right? So new, never used. They rust up. So I can show you there is a rust across the rail.
Yeah.
Never
well,
used.
I've never seen any rust on mine. Plus, I live in such a dry climate that it would, and plus, it's controlled. The temperature is controlled. It's between 50 and 70 degrees all the time, with a very low humidity environment. So it would be unusual to get rust on these. And I can't see any discernible color difference between the two lanes.
No, but my comment.
And the pieces of track that I have sitting around don't change color at all.
Yeah, mine do, and they get a grey sheen over time, which I was always I always thought it very yucky, and whatever it is, it's conductive but not optimal. So I was always taking like 600 and 800 grit wet and dry, and actually just going along both rates. A laborious task, don't get me wrong, to go around all the top surface of the rails and get them all looking shiny again, and not knocking off the nickel plating at all, but just polishing it up. But they would really shine by comparison, and I felt I could measure the difference because I have a power supply. What I was doing with my track was as a test track. It was the majority corners. There were only straights. The longest straight was 2 track pieces, and the lap length was about 6 or 7 seconds a lap. And I could turn the voltage up in very small increments, and literally just put a car on there and turn the voltage up until it would crash, and check the lap times as it was going. And I would always get better conductivity from shiny, freshly abraded rails than anything that had got grey top surfaces. Just that the braids were working better. And it's not like the grade surface stops the track from working or the cars from running. A lot of people will be very happy to leave it alone like that. But I never used to do it. I used to, in fact, I would take my track down and then clean it all up before I put it back up again. And it's a huge task, don't get me wrong. But yeah, perfectly functional skate electric track just goes grey. And I don't see it with Ninko, and I don't see it. I mean, I know where there are Ninkos that never get polished. They just lay there forever, years and years, unaltered, as far as it looks, anyway. And yeah, I don't see it with that, and I certainly don't see it with certainly don't see it with any of the Polycar or any of the, shall we call them, new generation track pieces from any of the manufacturers. Because I know they're stainless, and Carrera's stainless, and it's, you know, it's just not nickel plated. It's different. I always wonder about that grey.
Yeah, it is interesting, but I've noticed that before, and it doesn't seem to make any difference if I switch power bases. So I've had power bases that I've had for some reason had to change. One of them had a piece of wire in it that I had to change out and then put the other power base that I have into it. But that didn't change that fact of it. The outside lane is always slower. The only way I could probably change it would be to go internally inside there and switch the wires around, use extension wires to change the inside and outside lanes so that they were powered from a different source. So the inside is powered by the outside lane and the outside is powered by the inside lane. The only thing that would change would be the if you did analog, it would change which controller uses which lane. That I can think of. That's the only way I think of to change it and see what happens.
I got interested in copper taped wood tracks recently because copper tape has finally come into my life. Not because I'm building any slot car tracks, but because my missus has started getting interested in stained glass construction, which they use it on. And I was in a store just a week or so ago where there was lots and lots of rolls of it hanging on the wall. And when I got home, I had a long chat with artificial intelligence about how thick a copper tape needs to be on a slot car track to have the minimum of voltage drop along its length. And it turns out that you have to be very careful with your choice of copper tape for a wood track. I think, unless you're going to run really teeny tiny motors, because it has a significant voltage drop along long lengths of it, which is what we're doing when we're laying them out on wood tracks.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I bet you there's a lot of copper tapes that people might even have picked up and used that are just flat out unsuitable, unless they're used over shortish distances with many joints and many power taps in them.
Well, I know for sure that I've got what I believe is plenty of power taps, but it could be that there's not enough. And if the voltage is different in the power base, that would change things completely.
Well, you see, you like to use SSD, and oxygen doesn't require you to use the power from your power base. You can just put power supplies on your rails, and you could do a separate power supply for each rail if you were just going to run oxygen. But I believe you can't do that with SSD, so that's why you need to make them your APB.
Yeah, it's a different setup.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's move along. Jim still has his hand up. Gio took his hand down. I don't know what's going on. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, we are on Club Corner, correct?
Yes, sir.
These are future races, semi-future races. We have our Mosler race coming up this weekend, sponsored by Professor Motor. And we're having practice all this week. So we had a practice race Sunday. We had a race last week. So we're heavily into Moslers, which personally, I don't like them, but that's the way it goes. We have 30-some entries, and so it should be a pretty good race. They'll be live streamed on Saturday for qualifying, 3 rounds knockout qualifying. And we're also doing an IROC Saturday after qualifying. And then Sunday will be the main race starting, I believe, at 8 a.m. with the lower mains and on up through the same format that Electric Dreams uses. Qualifying sets the heats, heat sets the semi. There's the last chance qualifier for the people that don't make the semi, one final chance to make it, and then two semis and an A final, which is 5 minutes per lane. All others are 3. So that's this weekend. Another thing happened this weekend that some of you may have already seen, and I have no affiliation with this at all, so I'm just throwing it out there. There's a new organization, and it started by a couple guys in the Midwest to promote 30-second scale plastic track, easy to build, fun to run type slot cars, very similar, and I just say similar because it's not the same, to what they do at the WRE in Europe, where it's a plastic track with slip-on rubber tires. And so that's what they're trying to promote. So hopefully it'll come about. I think they've got a tough road to go doing this, but I wish them well. And I think, glad somebody took the initiative to do this. They've talked to manufacturers and quite a few other people about this. So initially it's going to be a scale auto. Well, the first race is already scheduled for next year. It's a 3-day race. Rules were preliminarily, I'm not going to go through them all because if you want to see this, you can on their Facebook group. But they put out the preliminary rules, the preliminary schedule for this event. But this first event will be on 2 8-lane scale auto tracks, and it's for scale auto GT cars. And there's a couple of classes. So if you want to read about it, you can. But it's interesting. And like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll be successful, but I'm glad somebody took the initiative and tried to start something like this. They want it to grow throughout the country, and that's where I'm kind of optimistic. I'm not sure if clubs will buy into what they want to do, because every club wants to do it. It was mentioned a couple of weeks ago at one of the big races that would it be great to have a set of national rules? Well, it would be until every club thinks their rules should be the national rules. So it very rarely works. So hopefully they'll succeed. I'm sure they'll succeed in having some big races because they have sponsorship. These are going to be big tracks, not like, bigger than most commercial wood tracks, 150, 170 feet, 8-lane, scale auto. And like I said, the initial race will be a race for scale auto GT cars. So just thought I'd throw that out because it's kind of interesting, and I hope they have success.
You don't want to mention who they are?
Well, Steve Holtzman is one of the people. The other one is Greg, I forget his name. It was on that sheet. If you want to go on the Facebook sheet, see the 2 principals involved in it. I know Steve Holtzman was one of them. I met him at the Slotted Nationals, and they were all at that big NSR East race a couple weeks ago. So they're heavily involved. They like the idea of a plastic track that nobody knows what the layout is until you get there, and it's slip-on tires. And they will be rubber slip-on tires. It's not silicone. So they're heavily into the plastic track, large plastic track. I mean, physically large, not like a home track or anything like that. 8-lane slip-on tires, easy to build. No, they're not technically their words, but words to the effect. No tire voodoo. You put the car in impound without tires on it. The tires you're going to race are put on the car, and you run the car. So there's no tire truing, there's nothing like that. So in theory, it sounds good. In practice, I'm not sure if nothing's perfect. Coming from an HO background, I know there's no 2 tires made the same. And so, we'll see how it goes. I wish him well. Like I said, I have no affiliation, don't even know the people. I met Steve at the DATS, but that's as far as it goes. So, we introduced myself and we said hi to each other, and I was working with other people throughout the weekend, so I didn't have time to really talk to him extensively, but like I said, I wish him well. Step in the right direction. How far it goes, who knows? It depends on whether people will buy into that. And, obviously we have issues. In Europe, you can kind of do things like this because, relatively speaking, it's a compact area. And here we're out here 2,000 miles away from most of where this action is taking place. So because of the size of the country, maybe an issue in terms of getting this going nationally. But whatever happens, happens. Like I said, I wish them well.
Okay, great. I was muted out earlier. I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself with this stupid cell phone. And I was gonna make a comment to Wade on his little experiment with the copper tape. And it's coming from a, from a thermoelectrical background. That aluminum, the different grades of not thermal, but let's go electrical conductivity, goes from aluminum being minimal, then copper, then you can get silver, and then you can go to gold. So if you really want to try to increase your conductivity, and you have the budget for it.
Yeah, let's gold plate the connection.
Not gold plate the connections, make gold plate, make your
Rails.
gold plate rails.
Yeah, the calculation that the thing that the AI was doing was the cross-sectional area of the copper tape. Well, of course, it's mega thin and 6.35 wide, quarter inch, or 7.3 sometimes. You can get it I believe it's 7.3, 7/16, is it? Anyhow,
Yeah,
it was calculating the cross-sectional
is
area.
supposed to inch.
Yeah, we usually most of the copper tape around here is
Those are mils.
eighths wide or something like that. It's less than a quarter inch.
Is it?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think
I
it's
must have-
7/32. That's what you want?
That's the number, 732. That's right. It was on the wall at 732. Of course, I'm always a millimeter man, so talking to Americans about it is tricky.
Yep.
All right.
I wanted to know from Jim why he doesn't like Moslers.
What was the question? What was the question?
You said it's the Mosler race, and I don't like Moslers.
I just don't like the car.
To look at or to drive?
Yeah, no, to drive they're fine. It's a good slot car. I didn't mean to say that. I just don't like the Mosler.
I see. To look at.
It's the blob syndrome. They're much more of a blob, I think.
Yeah, which is why
They've been
banned in every
modified
club.
to a large extent. The real car is much slimmer.
Yeah, which is why they're typically banned in every club that runs NSR GT cars.
I don't get along with them on my track, which is weird.
Well, there's not much difference between a Mosler and a Corvette, the C8, in terms of the slot car, but the body is about 5 grams lighter.
Yeah.
If you look at the chassis, they're somewhat similar. Now, the only difference is at Motown, we're running our GT3 class. You can run any brand you want, but it's all angle winder long can specific. And this is the 25K short can. So it's a little different setup, but they're very similar in lap times.
Yeah.
Righty, moving along. Is Gio still there, or did he disappear completely? Oh, all right, he must have had a business meeting to get to. All right, any other racing anybody want to talk about, past, present, or future? If not, floor is open. Topics, questions, project.
I got something. I don't know if anybody else has seen it, but there's been some discussion about cambering the rear tires on slot cars.
I've seen that.
First off, the persons that have perpetrated it, I've seen a couple of the videos on it, have positive and negative camber reversed. In car speak, in 1-1 car speak, if this is the left wheel, negative camber is the bottom of it being out toward the outside. Positive camber is the upper part of the tire being outside. Okay. So what most people are doing are putting negative camber on a real car to try and get better traction. In the slot car world, what they're calling negative camber is actually positive camber, so that the outside is slightly raised, so the tire is canted in. The theory is that as the car slides, it starts to tip, and it'll tip over on the outside edge, and that causes more traction to be on the outside corner, so you get more traction on that outside edge. So I haven't tried that. I wonder if anybody else has.
They're
How
not
are
actually
they-
talking about camber, are they? They're talking about conical tires.
Yeah, how are they inducing camber on the wheel?
They're not.
You don't.
Okay.
No, they're actually discussing conical tires,
Correct.
and they're wrong.
Well, if that
They're
was
wrong
in fact,
in what way, Wayne?
if that was in fact the case, the tire would naturally wear that way as the tires wear.
They
They
do
do.
on the 124 scale track that I race on the foam tires. They do wear that way.
Yeah. And so they do on rubber too. If you run them long enough, they wear that way.
Just takes longer.
It takes longer. And the reason they wear that way is because most of the load is on the outside edge of the tire.
Yep.
Now, there is a case for a conical tire, a marginal case. And that is that a cross-sectional line across a rectangle that is at an angle is actually a longer line. Do you get that? Do you follow me? If you go, if you go from one tire wall to the opposite tire wall with a diagonal line, it's a longer line, and that gives you a wider contact patch. That's presuming that that it is in fact in contact. If it's not in contact, it doesn't matter that your tire's wider. Your tire top surface is wider. If it doesn't touch, it doesn't touch. So when the tires go from being what we will call a square towards being conical, they can actually pick up some extra tire width, and that feeling may actually benefit the cars. But to have a tire that's smaller on its outside diameter than on its inside diameter is actually an indicator of wear, and it's not optimal, because even though the cut tire that's in the outside of the corner has got a slightly wider contact, because it's the shape it is, the motor pod or chassis, if it's not, the car's not got a pod, will actually roll onto it, and that will cause the inside tire to have almost no contact, or else a bicycle tire width, a very, very narrow contact, because the two tires are both coned in the, in the way that they're smaller on the outside. So what you gain on the outside, you lose on the inside rear tire. Now, admittedly, the inside rear tire is very lightly loaded, but the way that slot cars are currently made with a motor pod, particularly when there's a motor pod in the system, is to maintain as much load on both rear tires for more of the time than any car that's not got a motor pod. Because maximum grip will always come from two tires working together.
Yeah, the load transfer from the body comes later.
Well, yes, it comes later, and it comes in smaller quantity.
Right.
Because you've often got springs in between your body and your motor pod. So your body shell and your chassis can roll and leave the motor pod flat, level-ish, with kind of even loads, kind of. And that's the optimal. That's what the motor pod attempts. That's one of the things that the motor pod kind of attains to some extent. There is always still a role that the motor pod itself is taking, just because it's going through a corner and its motor is taller than its motor is higher than its axle line. If there's an offset, if there's a zero offset, then the motor's the same height as the axle. But if there's like a 1 millimeter offset or a 0.5 millimeter, like there is in most motor pods, well, in that case, the motor gets slightly lower than the axle line. But the actual motor pod itself has a mass and therefore tries to roll. Whatever the body shell and chassis are doing, the motor pod itself is trying to roll. And the tires are resisting that roll. So there will always be a force, a load transition across the rear axle. It's just minimized when you've got a pod, in a way that a fixed chassis with a fixed body will transition more weight more quickly, more load more quickly. So the tires wear conical and they wear the opposite way of a negative camber, what you might describe as a negative camber.
Yeah.
And that's just wear. I still believe that that's not the right way to be. The right way to be is a square tire, or possibly very slightly the other way, but only very, very slightly.
Well, one other thing I think about there is that using an optimum width wheel can have a consequence too, because if you have the inside edge of the tire where it's mounted to the wheel itself, the barrel of the wheel,
Yeah.
If you've got too much squish on the outside edge, that can come up and change the way the car handles too.
You could argue that an 8mm wheel and a 10mm wheel are the same thing, because the rib in the middle at 5mm wide is the same rib on both wheels, and therefore a tire fits on both wheels the same. The difference between an 8mm wheel and a 10mm wheel occurs when the bead on a tire is either wide or narrow. If it's the narrow bead, then it doesn't matter whether it's on an 8 or a 10. But if it's a wider bead, then a 10 may support it in a way that an 8 can't.
Yeah, agreed.
But when you pop a tire on a wheel under no load, it's the same shape because of the 5mm ridge. I often used to think that I don't want an 8mm wheel, I want a 10mm wheel. But I've reversed that thinking now, because in many cases with the tires that I get to use, they will sit on an 8 perfectly well. And an 8 is lighter than a 10. I know it's only a small quantity, but in the small quantities lies the bigger gains, because you add up all the small quantities and hopefully there's a bigger one.
Yeah, well, you're using 1323 or 1171 tires, right?
You are exactly right. And those are different to one another, but they both sit on an 8.
I usually use the 1172s, so they're wider. So they stick out more from the 8mm wheel.
Yeah. And I've made 9mm wheels. You take, because 9mm fits some tires absolutely spot on and provides all the support you need on the outside edge. But a 10 looks ridiculous because it sticks out, and it's like, I don't need to be carrying around a 10mm wheel. It sticks out more on the inside, on the outside edge than it does on the inside somehow, and that's because the tire just wriggles across ever so slightly.
Yeah.
And it's the outside of the wheel that sticks out, and it looks wrong, and so I've actually manufactured 9mm wheels for aesthetics and the fact that it weighs less.
I'm interested in Chris's opinion on this discussion, but maybe he just left.
I think he'd be largely.
Do we all agree that tapering the front tires is a good thing? I just make it so my outside edges are the thickest part, and then they taper in so they're not touching towards the inside for stability and for less contact rolling. But everybody's different, I guess.
No, we can agree on that.
All right.
Yeah,
that's right.
If you make a very slight cone on your front tires, you don't need a lot. It just means that the outside edges of them are the bits that are touching the track.
Yeah. I guess Chris is taking a nap.
Is he here?
Yeah, he's here.
Yeah, he's here, but I don't see him or hear him.
I heard him earlier, but right now Chris Walker's got a picture of Geo above it in my mobile phone. So
that's not right.
I know there's a company that sells a metal thing you can attach to your hoodie to get it to adjust the tire taper, but then you can also, there's a 3D printable one too you can do.
Yeah. There are comparisons to radio control cars. There are several radio controlled categories out there that have, we'll call it solid rear axles. Insofar, some of you will know this, but the 8th scale circuit cars, they have 4-wheel independent suspension, but the rear axle is solid insofar as there's no differential. And when they cut a fresh tire to start a race, they will cut it with a cone on it. And the cone on it will be smaller on the inside, larger on the outside. And when they finish an event, a long endurance race, and by that I mean 30 minutes to 45 minutes, they'll come off the track and they'll have the opposite cone on the tire. But that's a foam tire. Then there's 12th scale indoor circuit racing cars, and they have a motor pod very similar to a slot car, a solid axle with no camber on it. And they'll also cut a slight cone in their rear tires in the same direction, inside edge smaller. And likewise, as they go through their wear process, they'll go via perfectly square and eventually go conical on the outside. And that's a situation that people don't like to be in for best performance.
There's other issues not other issues, but some of the reasons where they do it. If you take a paper cup, there's taller on the outside, and you roll it, it rolls in one direction.
Yeah.
The smaller end will turn to where the smaller end is if you roll that cup down an incline. And that's one of the reasons you do it in RC cars, is because you're putting that cone in it to get the car to turn, because it will naturally turn with that cone in the tire.
Yeah, and the natural tendency is for that tire to actually stay in line rather than swing out.
Yeah. Now, that being said, I haven't raced RC cars for a long time, but when we put that 2-degree cone in it, it stayed there, because that's the way we set the car up to naturally put a 2-degree cone in. And if we ran a regular tire that hadn't been coned, after 15 minutes of racing, the cone would be there. So we started cutting the cone into the tire so it would start out that way and finish that way. We never had an issue where the tire would cone and then cone to the opposite direction after it ran a while.
Are you talking 8 scale
Yes.
circuit? Yeah.
Yes.
Those have independent suspension. And what
Correct.
you can do is and you'll see this design fundamental in most of the 8 scale circuit cars, they've got a very, very steep angle on the upper wishbone arm. Yeah. So the inboard end is mounted to the chassis very low. The outboard end is mounted to the hub very high. And what that does is when the wheel goes upwards through its suspension travel, it gains a lot of negative camber.
Yeah. Well, in the early days, what was happening is we would set the cars up and we'd cut the tires flat. Then after running for 15 minutes, that 2-degree angle would be in the tires because the tires were flaring.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's what happened.
Yeah. So we started cutting that cone initially so it wouldn't change as the car ran.
Yeah. Of course, you can set camber on those cars too.
Yep. Yeah.
And now
stays in there.
Adjusting your tires angles for what's that when they drive in a circle? I can't remember that type of whatever. Like those guys that have the circle tracks that are like banked on both ends, and you just go around in a circle all day. But I wonder if you pitched your tires for that, if that would actually work in the turns and give you an advantage, or would you lose that advantage when it flattens out and then goes back into a turn?
Are you talking about stagger?
Just like a circular track. What? I don't know. I'm not allowed to race on that.
Stagger is
oval.
one thing.
I'm not
in
allowed
oval
to
racing. They don't run a stagger, Jeremy.
You
run a bigger tire on the. It's a stagger in oval racing.
Okay.
The outside bigger tire on the outside, in diameter.
Bigger diameter on the outside, smaller diameter on the inside.
And it makes the car turn harder.
It makes the car want to turn. It's turning all the time. Sometimes they go down the straight with some opposite lock on, don't they? And then they let go of it and it just turns in, and then they add to it as necessary to get around the turn.
Well, when you're going around an oval, let's make it a paved oval because it's probably a little more applicable. With stagger in the car wants to naturally turn. And so you may have to turn the wheel to the right a degree to go down the straightaway straight. And there's an interesting story back when Mario was racing Formula One with Colin Chapman. At one particular circuit, he goes, 80% of the turns are left-hand turns. Let's put some stagger in this car. And they went out and it worked on a road course based on the fact that 80% of the turns were left-hand or right-hand. Doesn't make a difference whichever way it is. But if you've got a predominant You can pick up a tenth on 8 turns and lose a tenth on 2 turns, but your net gain is 6/10. So he tried it in road racing and it worked.
So do you put the bigger tire on the inside of the turn?
You put the bigger tire on the outside of the turn.
On the outside?
Yeah. So on an oval, on an oval, which you're turning left, the right tire would be bigger than the left tire.
Okay. So I thought you'd want to keep the car straight in the turn,
No,
but
because you're
you
wanting
want
to
it to
make
even
the car
pitch
turn.
even more. Okay.
You're
The
wanting to make car turn.
the outside tire travels a further distance. That's
Right.
why.
Okay.
Yeah, well, think of it back to the paper cup. If you put the paper cup, the small side on the left and the big side on the right, and you push it, it'll turn to the left. It
Yeah.
won't go straight. And that's what you're doing with stagger and an oval car. You want to make it naturally turn to the left.
Gotcha.
Same
Have you
reason
ever
they put
driven a slot car? Have you ever driven a slot car with odd size rear tires on?
what was the question?
Not
Has
for me.
anyone ever purposefully driven a slot car with odd sized rear tires?
Yeah,
No.
on a oval track.
When I did it on a circuit, I discovered that the car would have the back end towards one side of the slot on power, and then when I lifted, it would switch. When I went to the brakes, the slot car would actually step out in the opposite direction. It would switch. It would move the rear across the track just by enough, not quite enough to get the tires to the rails. And it was quite a peculiar experience going down the straight on the power, and it would be pushing her one way, and you could see the back was slightly off center, and then you would hit the brakes to go into the turn at the end, and it would switch from being with the rear to the left side to being rear to the right side, just because you were not pushing the car forward, but pulling it backward. It was ever so strange and very obvious to see.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris was saying when I said the floor is open, he started talking, but I don't know. Is he back? Chris, you back? No. Found something better to do. See if the YouTube
Anyway, I
said-
thought I'd bring that up.
It was an interesting read.
You guys are all done, huh?
There was a UK disco race this past weekend. I think
Oh,
there were
really?
8. Yeah, there was 8 two-man. I couldn't attend, work commitments, but there was 8 two-man teams on the big monster. What's it called? The monster circuit up at Rockingham Raceway. Last round of the GT3 series this year, which was I think it was 6 rounds. An Oxygen GT3 race, 2 times 90 minutes, and yeah, it was went successfully. End of the season, and now the discussion has turned to what do we do next year? Do we continue GT3s? Do we go racing WEC again, or what do we want to do?
Was that the one where they were saying that there were no problems? All the latest firmware, everything was super smooth, hunky dory, perfect.
I think Oxygen's in the best place it's been for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's starting to be viable now.
Viable. It's happy to be viable.
And you're using version 3 stuff, right, Mike? Or are you doing version 4
What's
stuff?
that?
You still using version 3 stuff, or did you go version 4?
Yeah, I'm still using version 3
Yeah.
because I'm looking forward to forgot the guy's name, German guy that's doing the
ESR.
Chris
Yeah.
DSR.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to his system, our race management system, so that he can, use all the simulations and stuff in version 4. The only thing that's kept me in version 3 is the simulation factor. And since I can do it on PC Lap Counter, that's great. I'm not perfectly thrilled with PC Lap Counter. There's things that I would prefer to have on it, but that's part of our RMS. I'd prefer that our RS6 or
RCSO2.
no, not RCSO2, RCS 64 worked the best with SSD, but that's not happening because I'm going to continue to run SSD and oxygen because some of the cars like the slotted classic Formula Ones, there's no way that you can fit an oxygen chip in that. I mean, they're just too tiny. You can barely fit an SSD chip in there. So, I will have to do that. I'd eventually, in my dreams, I would like to have both tracks be polycar with the possibility of running SSD and oxygen. So I've already proved you can run them together. I just have to figure out a way to run the lap counter setups with polycar.
I think it's exactly the same for Geo, and that's why he stuck with Oxygen 3. His race management program can do simulations, and he likes that.
Yeah.
And if there was a simulation style management system for Oxygen 4, he would adopt it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would too. I mean, that would be super simple if there were that for my oxygen cars. I still haven't run a race on the new track yet, but I'm working on that, trying to make sure I've got everything down before I spring it on them. I have to take baby steps with these guys because you don't want to alienate them too much. Because all my fun would go away then.
Does anyone recall the fact that Henry went to Spain to race for 9 hours on their Oxygen Digital Series? They do a 3-event series and they do 9-hour races on there with what are effectively LMP2 cars. And by that, I mean slotted Acuras and Oricas. Those are the only cars permitted. And handout tyres, I think it's Spinner Scale Auto AS25 tyre. And stock motors, MX16 motors are, and it's well supported. Well, the 2026 regulations, they've switched to GT3 cars, and all 3 clubs have invested in polycar layouts.
Interesting.
Wow.
We ran that class at Motown for 6 hours. The same, you're talking about Oricas, Acuras only with stock motors, and they ran great.
They do, yes. They are the basis of the Disca LMP2 category. Buy one, turn up, fit the control tyres and your handout motor, and you're in the race. It's the most accessible digital format in the WEC. A lot of people don't like the hypercar. If they have a reason not to like the hypercar, it's because the rules are open and you can do pretty much whatever you like, which is why Yona and I really love it. We get to.
I like it too, but I think they're too fast for the average racer.
Quite honestly, the difference in speed or the difference in the way they run is very minimal. Forgive me, chaps, but I've got to go.
Okay. Well, I was going to mention it. He brought up the Oxygen series in Spain, and I was just looking at the thread on that series for 2026, and they've already got more than 20 registered teams for that first event. So they've got teams on a backup list, on a reserve list, because they've got, Oxygen is limited to 20 cars. I don't remember any Oxygen race being a full 20. I remember they got pretty close, but I don't remember any being a full 20 teams. So that'll be cool to see.
Yeah. I could only wish.
Yeah. And of course, these are going to be, big tracks.
Yeah.
Print tracks. But yeah, the switching to polycar makes a lot of sense because the polycar lane changers so much better than changers.
Yeah.
The Ninco lane changers are even shorter than Scalextric lane changers. They're just like friggin' bam, you got to slow way down for Ninko lane changes because of that. But the Polycar just, nice long stretched out lane change.
Yeah, I
How many
can't
lanes?
wait for the pit lanes to get out.
I mean,
How many lanes? I'm sorry. I was gonna say, how many lanes would they have in a race with 20? I mean, I know they wouldn't go with the traditional 4 lanes, or they got to have a lot more than just 4 lanes to have 20 racers in a race like that.
it depends on the overall size of the track, right? Because
Yeah,
most of the time, some people use formulas like, a certain number of meters of rail per car, like 10 meters of rail per car, right? So if you got 20 cars, then you need to have, going by that formula, you need to have at least 200 total meters of rail, right? So distributed among multiple lanes, that means, let's say it's a 2-lane track, it's a 100-meter long track, which is crazy long, right? But if you do 4 lanes, then it doesn't need to be a longer than a 50-meter track, which is still fairly long, fairly big track. But if you stretch it out to 6 lanes, then the track can be even smaller, right?
gotcha.
So a lot of times what you'll see is, I believe the Oxygen Le Mans was the one that ran for many years, and that big basketball court basically
Right.
was for Newco. But most racers tended to stay within the center 2 lanes,
Right.
or 3 lanes, because the outside lane was a marshalling lane. A lot of the tracks I've seen have been 6-lane Ninco or 6-lane whatever, and same thing. Most of the racing is done in the center 3 or 4 lanes, or the inside 3 or 4 lanes, and then the outside lanes are used for putting the cars back on.
Right.
But I'd love to see 20 cars on my track.
They'd be bumper to bumper.
That would be so awesome.
I'll tell you, Greg, having on my track, which is 75 feet long.
Longer than my track, but if you got the drivers that can do it, then it can, right? If you got a bunch of noobs that are crashing into each other, then of course it's going to be.
Then it's a whole different.
That would be Rock'em Sock'em robots, right, Greg?
But I've talked about this before. You get a bunch of good drivers on, and you've got a bunch of this on the track, and not this, right? If they know how to drive, they know the course, they know the other drivers. You can pack them in on a small track.
Wow.
It's just like RC racing. You get 10 drivers that are world class and they can run nose to tail for 10 minutes, and you get 10 drivers that are intermediate. It's just a crash fest.
Exactly. Same thing.
Yep, agreed.
So yeah, the more varied the skill level, especially if you're doing an endurance race with teams, so you got multiple skill levels on each team, the more room is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
now
makes sense.
they haven't shown a picture of the track for the Spanish series that I was talking about with 20 cars. I could probably find pictures of their previous events that show the track, but it's probably either a 6-lane or 4-lane, fairly sizable track.
Mhm.
Alrighty. Check out the tubes. Got any commenters? Message redacted. Okay.
Okay, I have a question that'll fill some time. If you're holding a race or event, how many laps for each lane would you say is the sweet spot? Because you can determine a race with 1 lap, but it's not very much fun. Or you can do like Wayne and race 24 hours and 12,000 laps. That also doesn't seem very fun. So what seems to be the sweet spot for you? Now, of course, track length and distance make, all of that better. I mean, we've raced, 10 laps, we've raced 15 laps, 20 laps. What do you guys find the best to determine a fun event with a winner?
I'll go first.
Oh boy.
3 minutes. I think the
3
answer's
minutes?
simple. 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's not laps, Jeremy, it's minutes.
It's laps. I assure you, it's laps. It's
But
laps.
Whatever
many-
number of laps gets you close to 3 minutes, then.
Yeah, there you go.
I should briefly apologise. I work on an on-call basis, and my work phone was ringing, which I've kind of got to answer immediately. So I apologise for ducking away like that. But yeah, 3
We'll allow
minutes.
it.
We didn't mind the
Wayne,
break.
Wayne, you haven't gone 3 minutes on anything. Now, come on. Be serious.
That's my wife. Never mind.
I did. That's
He
what
did.
Well, I can tell you what I do.
Yeah.
I use 125 laps, and usually if there's not
But you're
a
digital,
lap-
right? That's 2 lanes digital, 125.
Let him finish.
Right. But that's comparable to having a 3-minute lap session with 8 lanes. So it takes about 24 minutes. And that seems to be a good ratio. We'll have 2 races a night, and it generally takes us a couple hours if you consider 20 to 30 laps of practice, qualifying, and then a 125 lap race. So 20 to 30 minutes seems to be optimum. If it gets more than that, people get tired of it.
And in your case and in my case, track calls generally split the time up. So you're not standing driving continuously that whole time. It's in chunks.
Yeah. It's interesting if you watch when there's a race between just Shiggy and myself, it takes about 22 or 23 minutes. If Joel comes in or somebody else, it can take up 35, 40 minutes for the same length of race because of track calls. And the track calls will vary, obviously because of where you crash. But the more track calls, the worse it is from that standpoint. But the point remains. And on the 124 scale races that I do, they do 3-minute with an 8 lane. So that's 24 minutes of actual racing with a minute and a half in between. So you get 24 minutes of racing, 10 minutes of in between. So
I'm on the 3 minutes worth of laps crowd as well. So obviously the number of laps will depend on the track.
Yeah.
Right. But about 3 minutes of racing is I think that's the sweet spot for me too. Well, shorter it feels too short, longer it feels too long.
Yeah, and our races are 3 minutes also. And a typical, if you're running relatively fast, the magic number is 30. So I would just go out on a limb and say 30 roughly is the number of laps.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I'll accept time as an answer too for other people. For you old people, yeah. I'll accept it.
No, but I think that's a good equation, 30 laps ish. Because most
3
tracks
minutes ish, 30 lap, yeah.
Yeah, most of our garage tracks are gonna be, sub 100 feet, and 3 minutes worth of lapping those tracks is gonna be pretty close to 30 laps.
Yeah, the typical lap on our track, I mean, the fastest fast guys are in the 5.5s and typically around 6. So that the math turns out about 30 laps. You can do 33 if fast guys can do 33, 32 or 33, but the average is probably around 30 for good number for a lap or for a segment.
Yeah. How many laps do you guys do, Jeremy?
Each track picks their own. Depends. Some of the bigger tracks, pick 12 laps. Some of the smaller tracks, 15, 20. So, but it's usually all the tracks in our area are between 50 to 70 feet per lap, per lane or so. We don't have any ginormous commercial tracks.
Yeah, my track is about 54 feet.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Greg, how quick is a lap?
On my track?
How quick is it?
Yeah, how quick is a quick lap?
5.5, 6 seconds is pretty quick for my track.
You know what? It doesn't seem to matter. Yes, we do go to extremes. We've got a lap that you're doing well to get around in 14, but that fills a sports hall.
Right.
But Yeah, but 6-second laps seem to be quite typical for slot cars, no matter almost what the track looks like. 6 to 7 seconds is the window which most tracks seem to just fall into.
The bigger track, the faster the cars.
Exactly.
You know, our track is faster in Motown, but it's also bigger. It's 90 some feet, which is not big for a commercial track, but much bigger than a home track.
Yeah.
And you're still in the same window, 6-7 seconds area.
Yeah, 5.5. But the other commercial track we have is much bigger, and it's literally almost identically 1 second a lap faster, slower than Motown with the same cars. So we're in the mid fives on one, and 2 seconds lap slower. So mid fives on one, mid sevens on the other, just a bigger track. Same cars.
And the bigger track usually means wider turns, so you're not slowing down so hard for tight turns like
Yeah.
on my track.
Yeah, it's big and wide open. I've told people this before, but to me, when you go from Motown to fast tracks, it's like going from Laguna Seca to Road America. One's big and flowing, and one's a lot of turns, not a huge amount of straightaway.
And the rare beast is a slot car track that's big but still got the tight turns, isn't it? And by the time you've got that, you're starting to look like a rally stage.
Well, you can't with a commercial track because they're 8 lanes. You can't put that many turns in that tight of space, or make them too tight to 24 because they're 24 scale tracks.
Yeah.
You can't make it so tight that 24 scale cars can't run. So we're just running on their playground.
Right.
Now, that organization that I talked about, they're doing Scale Auto, and they have the track that they had for the NSR Eastern. I think it had either 2 or 3 Scale Auto radius 1 corners in it. So they had some tight quarters.
A Scale Auto R1, is that about a Scale Electric R2 equivalent? Like how tight are they?
Auto R1 and Scale Electric R1 have the same radius inside lane.
Ouch. That's pretty tight. Those long, I was always worried about those long LMP type cars getting around those tight R1s. And I just slide through it. Okay.
I kick it out a little bit.
Actually, I could putting the hypercars through the polycar turn once is no problem at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit bigger, but not by much.
Yeah, that race is on YouTube if you want to go watch it, the NSR Eastern. And they were, in my opinion, they had 2 things that didn't mix: Scale Auto track and silicon tires. There's nothing wrong with either one, but I don't think that's a good match. And so
for what reason?
Around.
Silicon likes a slick track.
Oh,
a smooth surface to run on. Exactly.
Okay.
I don't have any experience, but I would assume that silicon would run very well on Carrera track.
Better.
People love
silicon.
Yeah, okay. Silicone runs the best on glass if you can ever make a glass track.
I've seen some guys
these are all plastic tracks.
Epoxy tracks.
Well, Luft cut one out of plexiglass, white. So it can be done.
If you built an HO track made out of Sintra, 32nd scale, a 32nd scale track made out of Sintra, that would be ideal for silicones.
There you go. Yeah, because the HO tracks do that.
I've got a friend who's just installing a router, a huge router, a bed on it that must be 6 foot, 10 foot, probably something like that. It might take an 8x4 sheet easily. And I keep looking at it and thinking, one of these days you're going to end up making a piece of slot car track.
Sure.
He doesn't know it yet, though.
And you may be responsible.
You got a shed yet?
No. Unfortunately, my neighbour 2 doors down, I can see out the back window, he's building something huge like that down at the bottom of his garden, and I keep looking at it with envy. It's taken him months and months. He's had a little digger around, and he's been moving stone down there, and it's slowly going up. It looks like a pagoda at the moment. Don't know whether it's going to get walls or not. It might end up only having a roof, but I'm already envious.
That would be great for a slot car track.
It must be like 6 gazebos side by side, if you like, 9 meters by 6, something like that.
Wow.
I'm not for a slot car.
That would be ace for a slot car track.
Actually, I could fit that in my garage here. That's about 27 feet, 29 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 27 by 27.
20, yeah. 3 gazebos is 27 feet. 3. Hang on.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9, 27. Yeah.
You see, Wayne, I do speak metric.
Hey, Greg, I want to go back to Henry's controller for a second. You still here?
Sure, go for it.
Hey, so looking at the plastic track, looking at the NSR nationals and watching that, and the R1 turns plastic track, does that have, I'm wondering if an anti-brake like they use on some of the Eurosport cars might be beneficial on the plastic track. Does that controller have capabilities like that? Because at less than $200, that's almost a gotta try. We need to import a bunch of them. I mean, I know Alan will, but
I think it currently does not, but because of the way that it's designed, it could be programmed to do so. So you'd have to make a compelling argument to the guy who actually writes the software that controls it. I do know that the version of the firmware that has pre-braking or whatever you want to call it, where as you release the trigger, it's activating some kind of power soaks to bring the motor down to the new speed more quickly. I would expect it would be fairly simple for him to add a coast, which is what HO people call it.
Coast,
anti-brake or whatever. A small voltage to make sure the car never slows down too quickly. I would never use such a thing on a plastic track with an NSR car. I would just turn the brake. I don't think I would want it to never brake, but that's the way that I drive. So I don't know. What makes you think that that would be a good feature?
it just looks like they have to slow down so much for those turns on the plastic track. They just visually it looks like they're just waiting and waiting and waiting to go. And maybe it's the silicone on the polycar, maybe it's because I mean traction is still traction no matter the surface or the tires. But I don't know. I just keep thinking, my guys at the commercial track are calling me and I'm just like, I think they just use so much brake. I'm wondering if less brake and I don't know.
I
think
agree with you on that because if you watch some of my videos, you'll see the difference in driving styles, and I use much less brake on. Since I can turn the brake down in the race management system, I will use less brake than most of the other two guys because they're so used to the big tracks where they brake solid and then come on to power right away. That's one of the problems that Shiggy has with fuel mileage, is because he's doing the stop-start style, and you can see on the track the car will come to an almost dead stop and then scream around the corner and go straight again. And yeah, I agree with you in that regard.
Well, is Henry taking suggestions?
I'm sure he would be happy to hear feedback. I wouldn't necessarily target him as the person responsible. I would suggest I mean obviously get his point of view, suggest it to him, and then he can talk to the guy who actually changes the programming. My understanding of that kind of feature is primarily used in HO racing for the high downforce magnet cars that literally stop on a dime with the tiniest amount of braking. I'm sure it's used elsewhere, but that's my familiarity with it. And the NSR championships, as far as I'm aware, were non-magnet. So if you had a lot of traction and with no magnet and you came out of the turn too hot, you'd be just wheeling yourself out of the slot. Maybe that's what you were seeing. They weren't coming on the throttle quite as quickly because they were worried
Maybe.
about wheeling out.
Did-
Chris, what
Did you test it back to back?
with my other controllers?
Yeah.
Not on Monday. No, I mean I'm familiar enough with my other controllers that the anti-spin was enough for me, and the ability to adjust brakes was enough. But again, it was rubber tires on a wood track, not silicone on plastic. But again, still, if the NSRs were running traction magnets, then I could totally see where a coast would be useful.
They weren't, by
I,
the way, but
yeah, I don't think they were, but still the magnet had the motor would have some magnet traction, right?
But not enough to really. I mean, NSR cars do slow down very, very efficiently. Their motors have a lot of torque, so you definitely want the ability to turn the brakes down a lot. Right? You don't want a controller that brakes too hard at its lowest setting.
the only reason to use anti-brake or whatever coast is if you turn the brakes off, not unplugging, but turn them all the way down to zero, and the car still has too much brakes.
Yeah.
That's the reason you do that in HO racing. And like Greg said, with a magnet car, when you let off on the throttle, the car will like stop before you get to the end of the throttle down. And so I don't think it's going to work at all in I can't think of any application I would ever try it in 30-second scale, barring magnet cars. However, if you want to try it, this controller has it.
Oh yeah.
So it's a very inexpensive controller. It's a little over $200. And it has, because it's made to work with HO cars, it has coast or anti-brake or whatever you want to call it.
One thing
Yeah, I mean,
one thing I did not test on that controller is how low the lowest brake setting is. I didn't turn brakes down to 0 to compare with just picking the car up off the rail. That's how I do a comparison. I pull it, see how quickly it stops, pull the trigger, pull it up, see how quickly it stops, and compare those back and forth to see if 0 brakes really is the same as just picking the car up off the track. I expect it to be, but no, I did not test it directly. So,
And in that race, the one back east, they had an R1, let's say left-hand R1 with a big loop, probably an R5 because it was a 8-lane track, followed by another, so a left-hand R1, about almost a 180 R2 right-hand, followed by another left-hand R1. So it was a hard brake, big loop, hard brake, and then go. And you'd never get the car stopped without having some brakes in it. So that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, this new series for the plastic track for Steve and Roger are doing, that's only about an hour from my dad's house in Ohio. And I'm thinking, if I could finagle a way to go up there for the weekend, that might be the option. But I don't know. And of course, I'm always looking for an advantage with the controller. I think, knowing the ins and outs of your controller are huge.
I think the sweep brake might have a better application where it lays on the brakes hard, but it releases. So when you get to that brake point, you're laying on the brakes hard, but it's like trailing brake. You're letting off gradually as the car goes around the R1 and then picking up the throttle. To me,
which controllers do that?
The Silage does. I don't know which other.
I mean, I have a Cobit, or the True Speed does.
Yeah, the True Speed does. The SCP does.
Yeah.
The SCP does it, but the SCP has one big disadvantage in using it, and that is that it always applies 100% at the beginning of the brake. And I've found slot cars, none of the classes that I normally race have a problem with sweep brake, But the one and only occasion I ran a Group C in that in digital on G25 tires on Ninko track, everything the same as I'm very familiar with, but the car is geared on a spec gear ratio, which is quite low. Yeah, they would lock up as you initially let go of the throttle, or initially hit the brake band, I should say, and then they would start to roll. And that initial lockup, if you got that, it would make the cars just slow a little bit, and then it would upset them. And it was a definite sweep brake. No, don't like
There's
sweep
one
brake.
controller that has sweep brake, but it also you can control the maximum brake when sweep takes effect, and I can't remember which one it is.
Solange does, but I'm sure some others.
It may be the +1 where you can control. You have sweep, but you can still tell sweep instead of starting at 100%, start at 80% and then sweep.
That would be really nice to have on an SCP, I think. For me, that would be the feature I would ask for if I could ask for anything.
Can you adjust the braking in the?
All right, we'll keep
in the
talking
app?
about this. We're past the top of the hour, so I'm going to end the stream. Until next week, everybody wave bye. And the stream is ending, and the stream is over. Now let's talk more about controllers. I'm going to go make
On that